Good morning, everybody. Jeremy Harshman, first one in the house. Good morning. Good to see you this morning. Gary, okay, one more beer. Good morning. Mike Tabor, good to see you. Canadian Jim, good to see you this morning. Cooper the Great. RJ's cooking again. Good to see you. Bob, good to see you this morning. Hope everything's well in Philly. Austin, good to see you this morning. Hope you and Miss Amy are doing well in Texas. Harley, good morning, brother. He's up and early this morning. Can't believe it. Mark G, good morning. Hope you're feeling well. Good to see everybody this morning. We'll take a few sips of coffee and let a few more get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Cheers with some Iron Bean coffee. Austin must have had a night shift last night. Tom, good morning to you. Hope everybody's had a good weekend so far, but it's not over. Still have the rest of this day, and I'm going to enjoy it. I hope you do too. So let's go ahead and get started. It is 7:01, November 17th. And Mark G says, hope to get released to go back to work soon. So if you're not aware, Mark was involved in a pretty bad car accident a couple weeks ago and got really banged up and kind of had a little bit of a recovery. And so glad to see that he's doing better. Although I'm sure that obviously still not back to normal, but improving nonetheless. So that's always a good thing. Did the brisket cook yesterday? We're going to talk about that. But man, other than the brisket cook, the main story yesterday was our weather. Our weather was miserable yesterday. Right now it's 46, high of 59 today with 5 to 10 mile an hour winds. But only 10% chance of rain today, which is great because it rained just like Forrest Gump. I didn't think it was ever going to stop raining yesterday. But we'll talk about that a little more in just a minute. First, little channel update, 5,327 subscribers. So that's pretty amazing. Thank all you guys for your support. I appreciate that. Mark says he doesn't know what normal is. I understand that. Mailbag since the Wednesday night show. So, Daddy Duck's Barbecue sent me some rub, some of his rub, Sweet Heat rub from Daddy Duck's Barbecue. Got this in and really love the smell. And it's got it's a little coarser rub, almost like a steak type rub as far as the pieces. You know, you can see some pepper flakes, some garlic in there. And it looks and smells like it's going to be really good. So I'm going to use that some in the next video or two and check it out and see how that is. But looks really great. It's got some nice textures in there. I really appreciate that, Daddy Duck's Barbecue. If you haven't checked his channel out, he's got a YouTube channel. Check out Daddy Duck's Barbecue. And on the same day, I get this sauce in, mild Capital City Mambo sauce, a Washington, D.C. style wing sauce. And this was from Elvin. Elvin, thank you so much. And I like this type of bottle over any other type of bottle as far as a sauce goes. And if I ever am lucky enough to have my own sauce, this is the kind of container that I always thought about it being in, because I just like the squeeze top bottle for applying it to whatever I want to apply it to. And then if I want more, I can take that off and I have a larger container hole, but I like that. And so I'll be using this in some videos as well. So Daddy Dutch Barbecue, Elvin, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate that. That's cool stuff. Thank y'all a lot. So that's the mailbag. Really cool. Always look forward to packages showing up. So good stuff. Austin said the wind's blowing about 25 miles an hour. So yesterday, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning yesterday morning to get ready for brisket cook. And it's flooding. I mean, it's pouring down rain. And the barbecue shed that I've been working on is functional now. It looks pretty decent, but I've still got some work to do on it. But it was good enough to where I wanted to go ahead and use it. And I was going to use the Kamado Joe with the brisket cook. And so I took the Kamado Joe out to the barbecue shed. Well, when I got up yesterday morning and realized it's flooding, I'm thinking, well, how are we going to film it out there? Because it's on the back part of our backyard. And so I thought about moving the Kamado Joe back on the back porch, but me and Brandy talked about it and said, no, just leave it out there. We'll do it out there. So we did. And it turned out good. But just walking back and forth every hour or so, getting damp, and it was cold and it was windy. It was just a nasty day. So while that brisket was in the cooler wrapped up resting, I went and got a hot shower and thawed out a little bit. But actually, Mike, it was back on the back half acre, but it seemed like 40 acre. It seemed like a 40-acre walk back there. But I want to thank Brandy for getting up. She got up about 5:30 yesterday morning to help me film everything. She's under the weather, not feeling good, and sick with old cold, and I've got some sinus stuff going on too. And it never fails every time this year it happens to us because, it's that time of year, but also we're teachers, and, kids are constantly coming to school, probably when they shouldn't be. And the germs and all that stuff. And so every year it happens. So I think 3/4 of the teachers at our school are sick now, probably, but it's just part of it, I guess. Austin says it was a sacrifice, but the brisket looked like it was worth the work. In that cold, did you notice needing more fuel? Those are great comments, and we're fixing to get into that. So let me talk about that brisket cook for a minute, or a few minutes. So I got up, and by the way, I've got everything filmed. I'm going to film one more thing, and it has to do. It's funny you asked that, Mike. I woke up before the alarm went off this morning, and I was just sitting there thinking about all that, and it occurred to me to do this morning. And sometime this morning, I'm going to edit that video, and I'll have that video for the brisket posted sometime by this afternoon. But I want to go back out there this morning sometime, and I'm going to take that divide and conquer system out of the Kamado Joe, and I want to film how much fuel was used yesterday and how much is left. And I also want to look at the placement of my smoke wood and see if there's any that didn't smoke at all, so that I can adjust that for my next cook. But I'll show you in the video how I set it up. But I used mesquite wood. I did find some mesquite, and I put one chunk of mesquite in the back, one chunk of mesquite in the front. Then I put my lump charcoal. Then I put a chunk of mesquite on the left and the right on top. That way, my thinking was, I'll have some smoke in the beginning, and then when it gets down closer to the bottom, I'll still have some more smoke. So I can have some smoke throughout the whole cook, keeping in mind that brisket is only going to take so much smoke, but I want to give it every opportunity to get smoked. David Cooper, good to see you. So yeah, Elvin, we'll get into that a little bit too. I'll kind of go through the whole process this morning, but again, it'll be backed up with the video too. So um, one more beer says tri-tip spatchcock chicken, bacon, burgers, pork chops, squash, all on the Traeger yesterday. That's awesome. You had a spread. And Harley, he was cooking yesterday at a hardware store in Gulf Breeze. Cooked some turkey breast and sausage and pecan pie and pumpkin pie, all kind of stuff. So had a really good time down there in Gulf Breeze. So so I'm going to film that this morning, Mike. How much fuel I used and how much I had left and that kind of stuff, because I'm curious about that as well. But throughout the cook, to answer your question, it was an 8-hour cook. I didn't add any more fuel than what I started with, and it was still holding temp and doing fine when I shut it down. So on that Kamado Joe, once I finish a cook, I can close down the top and bottom vent, and it'll smolder that stuff out, snuff that stuff out, and leave me some leftover lump charcoal to start my next cook with. So I'm curious to see how much I have after that. So that's how I started that cook. And really, here's a couple of things that I took away from this cook. First of all, the people that say, man, those Kamados, they're nice, but they'll work you to death, or, it's really hard to maintain temps or whatever. Me and Harley talked a little bit yesterday afternoon, and I told him the same thing. I'm going to tell you guys. I didn't work any harder yesterday using that Kamado Joe than I do my pellet grills. It was just as easy, if not easier, using that Kamado Joe yesterday than it was any of my pellet grills. And I'll also say, with the weather conditions, with it being in the mid 40s, with the wind and the damp, misty rain and the pouring down rain at sometimes, I didn't have to worry about flame outs or anything like that, because you're not going to have a flame out in a Kamado Joe. The only work that I did yesterday was pouring the charcoal into the Kamado. After that, I didn't do anything. I lit it. I let the fire starter burn out with the lid open. Then I closed the lid, started dialing in my temps. Once I got to about 225, I put it on. And from then on, I'd go out once an hour, and I had a little spray bottle with beef stock in it. And it was probably 3/4 of the way full of beef stock, and the other quarter was water. And I just mixed it up. Once an hour, I went out there and spritzed it with that beef stock mix. And if I saw it fluctuating just a hair, I would just give it just a 1/16 of an inch tap one way. I probably really didn't even have to do that, but I just felt like I needed to do something because I wasn't having to do anything. And it probably averaged 230 degrees, maybe 235 degrees the whole cook. For 8 solid hours, I didn't do anything to that Kamado, and it held a steady temp the whole time. So I didn't have to do anything. No different than a pellet grill. So I'm not sure what other guys are doing to make it so hard, but it was as easy a cook as I've had. So really happy with that Kamado Joe. It really did some work yesterday. So that covers the grill part. David Cooper. I'm so pumped. I loaded up yesterday 15-pound packer brisket, 13 pounds of plate ribs, 26 sausages, and 20 dried beef sticks. Let's just say it was so overwhelming, I decided to have a salad for dinner. That's good stuff, David. That's a good feeling. Yeah, Mike. Evidently, some people think that's too much work. I guess I don't know, uh, but it was super easy. So after about 6 hours, I checked the temp, and it was between 160 and 170, and the bark had gotten as dark as I wanted it to get. Here's the other takeaway from another takeaway from the cook. Uh, it's easy to say, I'm not going to wrap this cook, or I'm going to wrap this thing, or whatever, you know, whatever you want to plan out for your cook. But for me, I would just rather, and this is going to sound kind of silly in a way, but it's true. That meat is going to tell you what it needs and what you should do. You know, that if I can buy 4 different pork butts, all 8 pounds from the same place, so they probably came from the same producer, and cook them, and each one might turn out a little bit different because they're different pigs. They're just going to be different. They're not all identical, and so they're going to cook different ways. Sometimes you might cook a pork butt or a brisket in this case, and it never really forms a decent bark. And if that's the case, you don't want to wrap it. You want to keep trying to build that bark, so you may not wrap it. Yesterday, though, after 6 hours, keeping in mind that the rub that I used was dark in the first place, it had gotten really dark, but I knew that the rub that I put on there was dark, so I touched it and felt it, and it was building a really hard, nice, crusty bark on it. And at that point, I didn't want it to get any darker, so I wanted to wrap it. So now I've got butcher paper and I've got foil. Well, the last time that I cooked that brisket that Steven sent, I did butcher paper. Well, this time I wanted to do something different. I did foil. 3 layers of foil, wrapped it really tight, put it back on. And before I wrapped it, I sprayed the tin foil with a little bit of that beef stock, and then put the brisket on there, and then misted the top of that brisket with a little bit of that beef stock, and then wrapped it up tight, put it back on. 6 hours, 160 to 170 internal temp, wrapped it, and 2 hours later it was above 200 degrees, and I could literally take that thermopin and just drop it, and it would go all the way through that brisket. So at that point, my worry is maybe I got it too tender. So I was a little concerned about that. So I took it off, wrapped it in a towel, and put it in a cooler. Now, Elwin asked a question, why do you do that? You want to wrap it in a blanket or towel in this case, so it's not going to cool down too quickly, and it's going to kind of insulate it, hold in that heat. Put it in a cooler, again insulating it, and just let it rest. And even when I cut it an hour later yesterday, it was still really hot. I had to put glove liners on to handle it. It was still that warm, but it just kind of lets everything settle back in to the meat a little bit as far as the juices go, and come down a little bit slowly. Big Lou Barbecue, good morning. Eddie Hanks, good morning. Eddie Hanks, some sticks to cool wet surfaces. I believe your spritz was cool due to cool ambient temperatures. So that bark and smoke ring was top shelf. I leave my spritz in cooler in between spritzing. Yeah, that's a good point, Eddie. I had my spray bottle sitting beside uh, on the shelf of the Kamado, and because of the cool temperatures, it kept it cool. And I agree with that. I agree with that. Smoke sticks to cool wet surfaces. That's right. And that's why we talked about, again, and I forgot to mention this when we started talking about it. I took that brisket straight out of the refrigerator. Um, After I put my rub on it, I put it back in the refrigerator. Then I went out and started my Kamado Joe. So the whole time that Kamado Joe's coming up to temp, my brisket is back in the refrigerator, staying cool, so that when I put it on, it's at a cool temp, so it's going to pick up that maximum smoke that I can get. Um, so yeah. Now I still wish the smoke ring had been thicker. Um, that's one of the reasons why I want to go out this morning and film uh, taking the grill grates out and that divide and conquer system out of the Kamado, and I want to film how much fuel that I have left, how much fuel I burned, and which pieces of smoke wood burned and which didn't. I want to see that, so I can learn for next time. And it's all a learning process and learning from what you did to cook before. But uh, all in all, the cook lasted 8 hours. And that's something else me and Harley talked about. I thought that this cook was going to take at least 10, maybe 12 hours. And that Wagyu seemed to cook really quick. And so me and Harley were talking about that. And, those little veins of that buttery fat that run in between that meat, I think helps that meat cook quicker than, say, a choice or a prime cut. Um, because I really didn't expect it to go under 10 hours, but it was an 8 hour cook. And I estimate it started out as a 13 and a half pound brisket. And by the time I got done trimming, and keep in mind, there was a huge, thick piece of fat, that decor, that big piece that separates the point from the flat. It was really big. So that was probably a pound, but I probably trimmed 3 total pounds off of it. So it was probably around a 10 pound, 10.5 pound brisket, but it only took 8 hours. And I wasn't cooking hot and fast. I was cooking at 225, 230. So, but the results, I've got to say, that's the best brisket I've ever had, and maybe the best thing that I've ever cooked. Uh, Brandy was blown away by it. Nate, he came in and tested it, and he says, I mean, he's been eating my cooking many, many years, obviously. He says that's the best thing I've ever cooked. I think that's probably the best cut of meat, the best meat I've ever eaten. I'll say this is the truth. It's rare when you cook something that you'd be proud to take to any restaurant in the country and serve. I would take that anywhere. That brisket I cooked yesterday, I would be happy to take to Eddie Hank's house, Big Lou's house, Mike Tabor's house. I would take it to Franklin's Barbecue and serve it in there. That's how well I think that brisket turned out. It was beyond my expectations, so I was very happy with it. Morning, Matt. Good to see you this morning. Matt's going to try a hot and fast brisket today. There might be some folks on here, Matt. I've never done a hot and fast brisket, and I was thinking about that topic yesterday. And there's nothing wrong with a hot and fast brisket. I think it'll be awesome. I'm just, it's like some people like Cadillacs, some people like Corvettes. I'm just a low and slow kind of mentality, so that's what I'm comfortable with. But I would say just you know, the basic principles of barbecue. Watch your temps, watch your bark. When it looks the way you want it to look, if you want to wrap it, then wrap it at that point. If it's not getting the color you want, then I wouldn't wrap it, and I would keep letting it go. Keep an eye on your internal temps. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the internal temp is at the finish. You just want it probe tender. And that's the kind of guidelines I would go by. And it still should turn out great. Um, let me see. Larry Norris, good morning. Austin Dudley, what rub did you use on it? Okay, so, and I'll show you in the video, but I was kind of going for a Texas style, which is 1-to-1 ratio of salt and pepper. But I've always wanted to try to incorporate some iron bean coffee into one of those recipes. And so what I did, I had a bunch, thanks to Harley, I had a bunch. Pitmaster X, good morning. Good to have you this morning. I had a bunch of Traeger blackened Saskatchewan rub, which is very similar to a 1 ratio Texas style salt and pepper. And so I had that blackened Saskatchewan. But here's why it's important to taste your rubs before you put it on a big piece of meat, because that blackened Saskatchewan rub is black. And so you would think it would be predominantly pepper flavor. But when I tasted it, it's really predominantly salty. And so because I want that 1-to-1 ratio salt and pepper for a Texas style brisket, I added some crushed black pepper in addition to it. Okay. So that kind of gave me my Texas style salt pepper rub. But because I wanted to use some of that iron bean coffee into a recipe, I had some iron bean coffee, cast iron beans, the whole beans. I ground them up, and you'll see it in the video. I ground it up. It was probably 3/4 of a cup of coffee, and I added that to the blackened Saskatchewan, and that was it. Really simple, blackened Saskatchewan and coffee, iron bean coffee, the cast iron blend. Mix that all together, and for a binder, a lot of people use oil, a lot of people use mustard. My thinking is always this: I want to use something that's going to complement what I'm using, the flavors that I'm going for. And for this Wagyu brisket, I just want that beef flavor to come through. And so I had already mixed up my spritz bottle of beef stock. And so I just misted it with beef stock, and I used that as a binder. And I just took that rub, sprinkled it from up high, covered the whole thing, top and bottom. And that's what I went on with. Really simple. Blackened Saskatchewan and coffee, a little bit of beef stock for a binder. And that's what I rolled with. Turned out really good. Um, Eddie Hanks says all the folks that have beef roast texture type briskets, they are cooking too hot and too long after they wrap, or they finishing in Nesco cookers. Your texture was excellent. I'd eat that brisket. I appreciate that, Eddie. That means a lot, man. And I was worried that I had gotten it too tender, but it wasn't. And you could really tell it. My fear was that when I started to slice it, it was just going to crumble, but it didn't. The slices were really right on point as far as I was concerned. So I was really pleasantly surprised and happy with it. Elvin, so the big question of the day, is Wagyu worth it? So me and Harley were talking about that question last night. And I've got mixed feelings about the answer, but I'll give you my honest answer. And I want to stay here because I don't want to miss anybody's comment. But my short answer, Elvin, is yeah, it's worth it. That's my first Wagyu. I think my first Wagyu brisket I've ever had, ever cooked or ever had, as far as I know. I'm assuming that most restaurants don't serve Wagyu brisket. And obviously I've never purchased a Wagyu brisket before because obviously it's expensive. But, and me and Harley were talking about it last night, am I going to go once a month and go buy another, Snake River Farms Wagyu black grade brisket? No, because I can't afford it. But will I do that maybe once or twice a year for special occasions now? Yeah, I will. No doubt about it, I will. And I'll look forward to it because it was that good. It was really that good. Um, Now, there's a few factors that go along with that. Make sure you have to cook it right because I don't care if it's a choice. A choice brisket done the right way uh, will taste excellent. A Wagyu brisket done wrong won't taste very good. So you kind of get my point with that. You have to cook it the right way, which is why going back to Matt's comment about the hot and fast, that's why I like low and slow better because I feel like I'm taking away the opportunity for something to go wrong, going low and slow. Hot and fast, things are going to happen faster and you have less time to catch an error. Low and slow, things are happening slower and you can catch something and maybe correct it or slow it down or whatever the case may be if you're doing low and slow. So that's why I like doing the low and slow deal. Um, but with all that being said, at the end of the day is if you want to do it for a special occasion or you've won the lottery, uh, if it's in your budget, is Wagyu worth it? Yes, it's worth it. And I didn't think I would say that, but it's worth it. Let's see what else we've got. This afternoon, David Cooper, this afternoon I'm smoking a large batch of maple whiskey baked beans with sausage for a dirty potluck breakfast tomorrow. That sounds good. Jeremy, I think your cook time comment is something all barbecuers need to learn first. Yeah, you've got to, Jeremy, thank you for that. That's what I really believe, and I was thinking this morning, imagine this. Um, Imagine if your mechanic for your vehicle did everything by time. So he's doing a front end alignment. He's got your tires off and all this stuff. And the book says it's only supposed to take an hour and 15 minutes. And at the hour and 15-minute mark, he's got one of your tires on, the other one's still off, but that timer dings. Well, I'm done. Come get your car. Well, I'm done because, the timer dinged. It's got to be done. Obviously, it's not, and you wouldn't drive the vehicle. It's the same with your food. People that ask about time and temps, I get it. I understand. They probably just don't know yet that you don't want to cook by a time and temp because every cook is different. Even if the last 8-pound butt or 13-pound brisket took X amount of time, the very next one you get, maybe even from the same company, it's still going to be different. They're animals. You know, so it's going to be different. So just use your senses. Just like yesterday, I kind of wanted to do a no wrap brisket, but after the 6-hour mark, I just did not want it to get, and it was still really, really dark. It was black almost. I didn't want to continue to go that way. Um, but by no means did it have any kind of burnt flavor. It was that savory, salty, peppery coffee rub type flavor that I was actually going for, and it was perfect. I'm afraid that if I had not wrapped it, then it would have started getting that bittery type flavor. That's not what I wanted. So I went ahead and wrapped it. So just pay attention to it. Go with what your gut tells you to do. That's my biggest advice as far as that goes. So Mike says, a good question, Elvin. No doubt Wagyu is better, but is it 8 times better to justify the price? So, so Mike, I was looking, I think maybe at Walmart last time I was there. They had a brisket there, and I think it was probably a choice brisket. I think it was $40. So this brisket was 4 to 5 times that much. Was it 4 to 5 times better? It probably was. I'm being honest with you. I don't know if I've ever eaten anything that good. You know how in today's world, lots of times you go to a restaurant, if it's a steakhouse, you get a steak. If it's a barbecue place, you get some brisket or some pulled pork or whatever the case may be. And, you know, it's really overpriced and you eat it and it was like, that was pretty good. But it's nothing that just, man, you were you felt like you got more than your money's worth. I can't remember the last time I went to a restaurant and felt like I got more than my money's worth. Most of the time, I don't even get my money's worth. I could have cooked better at home. This experience yesterday, I got more than my money's worth, and that was a lot of money. So that's how good I feel about it. And I'm so happy right now. I can't quit thinking about it, that we've got leftovers in the refrigerator, and I get to eat that today. So I'm excited about it. So Harley says, Mike, that is a great point that me and Sandy talked about yesterday, and we did. For my budget, a Wagyu brisket is for those very special occasions, once or twice a year as a special treat. And me and Harley said just that yesterday, but I will be doing it more now after that experience yesterday. Eddie Hanks, Elvin fattest flavor. Wagyu is typically loaded with it. The higher grade of meat allows for more air. Bottom line, if you can't pay your electric bill, it's not worth it. That's it, and that's it. That's exactly right. Um, but again, and this is back to my point a while ago that I made about time and temp stuff, and something that I noticed again yesterday. I mentioned it earlier. You take a choice or even a prime brisket, same weight, same grill, same conditions, and cook it, and it might take 10 or 12 hours. The one I did yesterday took 8 hours. But again, that's why you don't do time and temp. You do internal temperature. You do what's it looking like? All that stuff comes into play because the fat content is different. The way the animal was raised is different. The way it was bred was different. Um, the exercise that animal gets may be different, which is going to affect the tenderness of the meat. All that stuff comes into play. So, um, just some takeaways from yesterday's cook. Um, what else we got? Stephen Manis. Good morning, Stephen. Stephen, I hope everything's doing well, brother. Hey, life happens, man. I'm glad you made it. Was the Wagyu better than the Kobe A9? Steve, me and Eddie and me and Harley talked about this yesterday. Couple of things. First of all, just like I was saying, two cooks are never the same. The A9 I cooked on a pellet grill. This Wagyu I cooked on Kamado Joe. So there's two different cooking environments going on there. Secondly, that A9 brisket I injected as well. But I'll have to say that Wagyu brisket yesterday was better. Now, with that being said, on the A9, I think that I should have cooked it probably an hour longer than I did. Um, because it wasn't quite as tender as I wanted it to be. So that's partly my fault. Um, However, yesterday's brisket, I didn't inject, I didn't do any of that. I just seasoned it and put it on. And it was that was the best thing maybe I've ever ate in my life. Um, However, that A9 was still great. Don't get me wrong. Um, but I will say, uh, if I and I'm sure I'll do more briskets in the future, and I'll probably do some on pellet grills. But I really believe that Kamado, that ceramic yesterday was some of the difference. That I just think it. I think that environment was really well did really well for that brisket yesterday. Um, Big Lou, not chatting much. I'm listening as I'm prepping. About to go about to go light up the grill before church this morning. Big Lou, man, I'm good. It's good to have you on the show. Big Lou, he's got one of those Gaucho grills as well, and we've been shooting some stuff back and forth about that. And I love that thing as well. Big Lou, what you cooking today? Austin, I have T-bones marinating in the fridge for later, but brisket sounds better. I'm sure those T-bones are going to be good too. Eddie Berry, good to have you. Eddie Hanks, I appreciate that. Big Lou, appreciate you. Y'all go check out Big Lou Barbecue's channel. He does some cool stuff on there. TC, too cool. Good to have you. Yeah, it's been a while, man. Hope everything's going well for you. Stephen, man, it's best chicken I've ever had was cooked on my Kamado Joe. Something about the ceramic grill. Yeah. Boudin dip. Man, that sounds amazing. The real Joey B, good to have you. Andy Evans, good morning. Revival and dinner on the grounds at church. That's going to be good. That's going to be good. Eddie Hanks, 159 for a 12 to 14 pound brisket. Does the brisket come frozen? How much time ahead of my cook do I need to order? So that's one of the things that I didn't film. I wish I had, but I got up at 4. And even getting up at 4, here's the thing about doing videos. Like if I had just was doing a cook and not filming, just regular dude filming, I mean, regular dude cooking, it would have been a lot less hassle. But, getting the cameras out and all that stuff, I knew it was going to take a long time just to get prepped. And I'm thinking this cook's going to take 10 to 12 hours. I wanted to try to get it done before dark. So I just didn't take time to like film it in the cryovac. I did take a picture and post that in the cryovac bag. So it comes, answer your question, it comes in a mesh handled bag, which is really cool. Makes it a lot easier to handle and get out of the freezer and all that stuff. I like that. And with that order, we also got a folding insulated nice cloth freezer bag, that you can put meat in, like from the grocery store and stuff. That was really cool. Snake River Farms deal. Some stickers and stuff like that. And then the brisket comes in the cryovac bag. It came frozen. And really well packaged, really nice. So I got it, but this weekend I thought we were going to Harley's, but then Harley had to do that cook. But when I got it, I thought we were going to Harley's this weekend. I didn't expect to cook it this weekend. So I put it in my freezer and froze it, which it was already frozen. So me and Harley's talking, and he tells me that he's got to do that cook this weekend. I said, well, I'll go ahead and cook that brisket. So I took it out. I took it out Tuesday night, I believe, of the freezer, put it in a sheet pan and put it in the refrigerator Tuesday night. And I just let it stay in the refrigerator Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday. And then Friday afternoon, I checked it and it was still, it had thawed some, but it was still really, really stiff, you know. So Friday afternoon, I just let it sit out on the counter, still in the sheet pan. And then by Friday night, late Friday night, I checked it and it was really cold but thawed. So at that point, I put it back in the freezer, and put it back in the refrigerator so it would stay cold, because trimming a brisket, something else, a takeaway, trimming a cold brisket is a lot easier than trimming, say, a room temperature brisket. So I want it to be cold. So the next morning it was thawed, but really cold. I took it out of the cryovac, washed it, blotted it dry with paper towels, and then commenced the trimming. After I trimmed it, then I started the filming process, seasoned it up, and then again put it back in the refrigerator so when it hit the Kamado Joe, it was cold. So if it's frozen, this one was 13 pounds. I would give it at least a good 3 days in the refrigerator to thaw out, and I would check it. If it's not quite thawed, I would let it sit on the countertop for a little while, but then put it back in the fridge. That's what I did anyway. So I hope that helps. But again, really impressed with the packaging and the way it was shipped and all that stuff. Really happy with that whole experience. So, and again, looking forward to some leftovers today. That's going to be really good stuff. May try a little of this Capital City Mambo sauce on it. I don't know. We'll see. I almost hate to put any sauce on that thing, but it was really good. Really happy with all that stuff. And again, that Kamado Joe was perfect. One thing I will say, before you leave, if you will give me a thumbs up, that'd be amazing. Appreciate all you guys' support with everything. One thing I will say, you're going to notice in the video, we had one little mishap in the video. We filmed going out there and wrapping the brisket. However, I've got a new microphone system. It's a wireless mic. And for it to work, I have to turn my power pack on, and then we have to turn on the little receiver that goes to our camera, or in this case, the phone. And we forgot to turn one of them on, so there's no sound. So I'm going to have to edit that in some way to still show it, but you can't hear me talking. So I'll probably put some captions, have some music playing during that part, but just know that, we did film it, but that's just part of being a YouTuber, and sometimes things happen. So any other reputable companies out there you would recommend for ordering meat besides Snake River Farms? Well, I know there for a little while Matador Meats was doing it, but I want to say that I heard that a week or two ago that maybe they went out of business or something. I'm not sure. The butcher shop, obviously, in Pensacola, Florida, has some great meat. Lobel's, obviously. Lobel's of New York. You know, they have great meats as well, but again, you know, they're not budget friendly, but the meats are going to be awesome. Kamados are great cookers. We'll have 3 fired up today. Andy, that's awesome. Okay, one more beer. I've had good experience with Crowd Cow. I've heard of that. I'm gonna write it down. I need to check that out. I think we talked about that on the last live stream, maybe. Eddie Hanks talking smoke ring chemical reaction. I know wood blocks are important, but how much credit do you give salt penetration? You know, Eddie, that's a good question. I watched a video a while back, and I can't remember what channel. I think it was called The Mad Scientist or Meat Scientist or something like that. But he did a and I think it was on steak. But he did an experiment where I think he added apple cider vinegar to one. One was plain. Well, I think one might have been salt. Um, one was something else. He did like 5 different versions to see what effects certain things had on smoke ring. Um, I've even heard of some people saying that oregano maybe has an effect in certain rubs on smoke ring. Um, I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you, Eddie. I'm not sure. That might be some kind of experiment that I need to do at some point, because I don't know what effect the salt is going to have on the myoglobin. You know what I mean? Um, I'm not sure what effect that has on it. I just know that at some point, when that myoglobin reaches a certain temp, then it starts to turn gray. It doesn't hold anymore. And so I don't know if salt is going to affect that or not. That's a good question. I know, like you were talking about earlier, I know that I know that a colder, moister piece of meat is going to affect a smoke ring, um, along with the wood, but I don't know about anything else, whether that has an effect or not. I know that the smoke ring that I did have yesterday, it was a vibrant red color, and I used that mesquite those mesquite chunks yesterday. Midland Meat Company in Midland, Texas has really good stuff. Appreciate that, Austin. Real Joey B, haven't had Kobe yet. Last Sunday and Thursday, had a Wagyu tri-tip each day. Cooked both of them on the Weber. Best meat I've ever had. The pit bull, like the tri-tips as well. I'm sure. That's awesome. Real Joey B, where did you get your Wagyu tri-tips? I've seen several people do butter poached tri-tips on a Kamado. I would like to try that with a really quality tri-tip. Go ahead and have Snake River. Yeah, yeah. I need to contact Snake River Farms. I want to do an experiment. Send me 5 Wagyu briskets, and I want to see what affects the smoke ring on them. Send me $1,000 of briskets because I want to do an experiment. That'd be good. A restaurant that cooks and sells exclusively just opened 4 miles. That's awesome. Good stuff. Yeah, Eddie, that would be an epic experiment. Unforgettable experiment. That'd be good stuff. Eddie, if you had to pick from the grills that you have right now, which one produces the best brisket for you? Here's something that I was thinking yesterday while I was cooking with the Kamado. One of the things that I think is different between a Kamado style and a pellet smoker, I love both of them. But yesterday, I kept noticing small bits of moisture coming out of the top vent where the smoke's coming out. And that ceramic is a porous material. And I think because that material by nature holds some moisture, I think that it just creates a more moist environment for larger pieces of meat to cook low and slow. Whereas that pellet smoker is more of a dry environment unless you add a little water bowl, or something like that. It's just something that I thought about yesterday while I was cooking on it. Jeremy says it's cold up here. I'll head south to help with that experiment. 62 Barbecue, good morning. First time watching live chat. I appreciate you being here. Good to have you. Miss Rhonda, good to have you. Surely you're not just getting up. Had morning errands to do. Turkey bacon and Dunkin' Donuts is today's specialty. Can't leave out cast iron. Iron Bean Coffee Company. That's what I'm talking about. Gary, I appreciate that. Good stuff. I attempted for the first time yesterday a little Facebook Live. I've got to get familiar with where buttons are and stuff to control some of that stuff, but I'll try to start doing some more of that during cooks, because sometimes there's things that are going on during a cook that I can't really film for the video, but just spontaneous, I can go Facebook Live or something and maybe connect with some of you that way. I'd have to go Kamado Weber Summit. Yeah. And I can see how that would be the case. However, Eddie, I've got to ask, the big round steel smoker. I mean, that's got to be one of your favorites. I think me and you need to work up a trade for that thing. Eddie, at some point I need to get down there to Louisiana and come to Eddie Hank's headquarters and cook us up something. But twice the work, and I can believe that as well. Do you use a water pan for this cook? What about when you do Boston butts? So for this brisket cook, I didn't use a water pan. I just had a spritz bottle with beef stock and cut with a little bit of water, probably a 3-to-1 ratio. And I spritzed it every hour, and that was it. And then when I wrapped it, I spritzed the foil before I put the brisket on it. Then I put the brisket on it, and spritzed the top of that brisket and then wrapped it up nice and tight. And that was all the moisture that I added to it. Um, and most of the time for my pork butts, that's what I do as well. Um, Now, when I used to cook on a gas grill, believe it or not, I used to cook on a gas grill. I still had a smoker box with wood chips and still added smoke, but I always added a water pan in that. And if I was using when I had my Weber kettle, I would use a water pan in it, and most time I would use apple cider vinegar in that. Uh, if I do use a water pan, most of the time I've got some kind of apple cider vinegar, or sometimes I use beer, um, depending on what I'm cooking. If I'm cooking some kind of Mexican something, and I want those kinds of flavors, I'll use a Bud Light lime or something with the lime flavors and all that in it. But with this, I didn't. And here lately, I've got to where I would just prefer spritzing. I don't know. I would definitely need a bigger barbecue shed, that's for sure. Now you have me thinking I need a Kong instead of a pit barrel cooker as the next purchase. I have an extra room now. Austin, that's one thing. Obviously, I haven't done one of those briskets on the pit barrel cooker. That would be an interesting cook. There, and me and Eddie uh, were kind of talking about this topic yesterday. He cooked some stuff on the Weber Summit yesterday that came out amazing. But as he was describing it, and as how I was looking at some of his pictures, it reminded me of the pit barrel cooker as far as the efficiency of burning fuel and that kind of stuff, and really the lack of work you've got to do. So, I mean, at this point, I really don't have a grill that's working me to death, you know. Uh, and everybody says that a offset will do that, and I'm dying to get my hands on an offset. Hopefully, before too long, I'll be able to do that, just to see for myself. But um, I think some of the work that a lot of people complain about with any type of smoker, I really believe that some of that can be addressed and eliminated with just proper planning out your cook, having a general idea of what you want to do before you start it, and nice, low and slow, paying attention. I think that's kind of having a plan before you start, I think eliminates some of that work. Eddie says he has extra room. Might be buying me a bus ticket, Eddie. In my case, it would be the only one I have. Grilla Grill Chimp. I'm definitely a novice and weekend smoker, but love to smoke food and get a lot of tips from all you experts. Well, Eddie Berry, I promise you, I'm not an expert. I just share what I learned from my experiences, and you're going to be the same way. You know, after every cook, you're going to learn something a little bit different that you might do differently next time. So practice and repetition. That's right. As long as you're not repeating what you did bad. Owl's Nest Barbecue, good to have you. I hung a 14 and a half pound brisket yesterday. Turned out great. Awesome. How did that cook turn out as far as how long it took and all that good stuff? Steven says, I can lend you my Yoder loaded Wichita. That'd be pretty cool, Steven. Although after all it would take to get it here, I might just try to get. I hadn't decided kind of what I want yet as far as one of those go. I still kind of, which, you know, those Lone Stars are nice too, but I kind of just have my eyes on the Langs. I guess probably just because they're not made far from me. So I'm kind of intrigued by those, and you don't see very many of them, especially in the YouTube community. So that would be something different. Real Joey B, that's a good question too. That's one of the things that I'm always concerned about with the pit barrel, with larger, heavier, and more expensive pieces of meat, is you want to make sure you got at least two, in that case, probably three hooks. Wow, 7 hours, that's pretty quick. Start to finish. That's awesome. But again, you know, with that, I think probably the cook temp, which you may know, you may have monitored it. I don't monitor anything on my pit barrel cooker as far as temps go. I just let it do its thing. But I'm thinking that that thing's probably cooking more in the 275 range, 275 to 300 range, probably. It might be different. I'm not sure, but that's just what I'm thinking anyway. But again, I don't monitor it, and I just let it do its thing. Cooked at 285, so that's about right. Used a Barbecue Guru Party Q. Good deal. Well, we've gotten some, let's see, it'll cost you some Bud Light and maybe dinner. I'll bring it next time we go to Tybee. I appreciate that, Stephen. Man, you don't have to do that. Yeah, I haven't been to Tybee in a while. Eddie Hanks. Oh, here we go. So I'll throw this out there. What's this going to be? When it comes to offset wood burners, I don't like reverse flow. The whole meat juice burning on the plate is a deal breaker for me. Yeah, that's a good point, Eddie. That's a good consideration. I've never thought about that part. I've never thought about that part. Yeah, now you got me thinking. Now you've got me thinking. Yeah, I'll have to do some more thinking about that. That's a good point, though. I could see how that might end up imparting a not so desirable flavor, maybe. That's a good point. Something to consider. That's why I like all you guys on here throwing back ideas and all that stuff. That's what it's all about. I appreciate all you guys. Yeah, guys, if you will hit that thumbs up button. Uh, you know, share the videos and all that stuff. Like I say, today this morning, once we get off of here, I'm gonna settle in a little bit and then edit that brisket video. Try to do as good as I can to give you all the info that I can, and then I'll post it by this afternoon. So I'm gonna go ahead and get off here. We've been on here an hour and 10 minutes. Appreciate all you guys for showing up this morning. Thank you for letting me share my experiences from the weekend, and also all you guys adding what you have learned from all your cooks. That's what makes this stuff work so well. So I thank you for your participation. I appreciate all you guys. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna get off here. Hope you guys have the rest of the weekend. Hope you enjoy it with your families. Hope your cooks turn out well. And stay tuned for that video coming up later on this afternoon. And if I don't see you before then, I'll see you Wednesday night. So until then, I'll be piddling.